Hi, I'm Liz Wong. So I'll give a little background on my project, what I'm currently doing right now, explaining the geology and science, and I'll wrap up by reading two poems that I've written today. Oops. So a little bit about myself. I grew up in Malaysia. I went to the US for my undergraduate, and then I came to the UK. I did a master's in London, was up in Aberdeen for a bit, and now I'm back in London. And my professional career so far has been working as a petroleum geologist in mostly oil and gas companies, and now banking. And I'm really just starting a writing career right now, getting started to develop a body of work. My debut novel is out next year. And this project is completely different, and it's a new thing that I'm starting on right now. I'll start with explaining what geology means to me. To me, geology is not just about rocks, but it's also about the stories that they contain. There are all these sort of really different and really strange earths that we can't see right now because they don't exist right now, but we can see them from the rocks. And I put here a few examples of like very strange conditions that Earth has experienced in its long life. So first of all, we have like snowball Earth in Precambrian, a very, very long time ago, where the Earth was either completely or mostly covered in ice. And it is very different from right now, as you can tell. There was maybe a bit of areas that weren't covered in ice, but most of it is covered in ice. You have the big coal forests of the Carboniferous, huge coal forests across the world. You have the mega floods in northwestern US, where basically the glaciers existed throughout the US, and there are these massive ice lakes which broke and created huge floods, and they're amazing. There's Paleo Lake Mega Chad, which is sort of a really large lake in Chad that existed sort of closer to our time, about 6,000 years ago. It's this massive inland sea in Chad, and we don't have. It was the largest lake in the world at that point in time. So in literary fiction and poetry, it tends to focus on the now, this sort of brief snapshot of this earth. But we can go deeper into deep time, sort of understanding the sort of large-scale immenseness of the rock record. All these stories that Earth has experienced, and it's sometimes preserved in the rock record. There's so much rich material in there to mine from, excuse the pun, from understanding geology. And we can sort of imagine some of these strange stories into our current world. So I have two quotes up there on the screen. The first one is, the past is a foreign country, they do things differently over there. And that sort of explains itself. And the second one is actually about diversity of people, but actually you can think a bit about diversity of stories we tell. So it's that when we reject the single story, when we realize that there is never a single story about any place, we regain a kind of paradise. Right now, we write stories about this current Earth, but there are a lot more stories out there, and they some deserve to be shared. And so that brings me to my project. So I am been thinking and writing material about the Messinian Salinity Crisis and how it would look like if it happened today. And to start with that, I'm going to do a really quick geological introduction because some of you may not know or may not be familiar with Messinian Salinity Crisis because it happened a very long time ago, actually 6 million years ago. And this is my chance to show some maps because I also like maps. Okay. So the Mediterranean Sea, I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It's a very large body of water. It's 2.5 million kilometers squared. It's very deep. okay, or it is deep. So it's at least 1,500 meters deep, and the deepest points go over 5,000 meters deep. It's not just a shallow sea, so it's much deeper than the North Sea, which I think of 90 meters average depth. And part of the reason is because the Mediterranean Sea has oceanic crust in it, so it's a lot deeper. So it's very deep, very big. And about 6 million years ago, the Mediterranean Sea dried up, or else most of it. And you can see pictures there that show the event, and this is called the Messinian Salinity Crisis. So these maps, so the first one at the top shows, I can do a mouse. Prior to the drying up, you have an open connection with the Atlantic Ocean, and the geology and the geography is slightly different because it's 6 million years ago. You get these two open marine connections to the Atlantic Ocean, and as the African continent moved into Europe, the tectonic movements of cut off these two marine connections, and the Mediterranean Sea started to dry up. It has a negative water budget, so it starts to dry up. It has no more connection to the open ocean, and there is not enough rain to fill the Mediterranean Sea. It dries up over a couple of 100 million years old, a couple of hundred of thousands of years. It's like a puddle drying up in the sun for a very long time. So as a result of that, the sea level falls quite substantially. So rivers start cutting down into the falling base level. It causes large canyons, and there's lots of salt that precipitates out of the water. So you have these large bodies of salt throughout the Mediterranean basin. And you can see in the middle picture, most of the Mediterranean Sea has dried up there, and there's a lot of exposed land. So about 5.3 million years ago, there was, so the Atlantic Ocean eroded into the Mediterranean Sea and caused a new connection, which exists till today. It's Gibraltar. And the Mediterranean Sea flooded over a very short period of time, actually 2 years, some estimates are saying. So, and I have a few more pictures here. So just to show you the scale of these things. So you can see at the top of the screen, this is a seismic line. I don't think you were expecting seismic lines here, but here it is. So there's this red reflector, and it's a huge erosional surface. So basically, when the rivers cut down, it cut down quite deep into the sediment, and when it filled back up, with soft sediment. There's also a picture of sort of salt, some gypsum. Really, it's sort of a close relation of salt. It was deposited when it dried up, and there's a picture of earth there, and how it looked like prior to the cutoff, and how it looks like now in red. So I also show this, which is some modern day analog of Salton Sea, which is in California. It's not really an analog, it's not really a true geological analog, because the Mediterranean Sea is a lot deeper, a lot bigger, whereas the Salton Sea is an inland lake, really, and it's a lot shallower. But it's an analog in that Salton Sea is an example of coastal sediments that have been basically abandoned. So you can see all these sort of abandoned structures, abandoned swimming pools. It used to be a resort town, a fishing destination, like how towns along the Mediterranean Sea are like now. But the lake dried up. There are these beach villas are abandoned, shops, boats, docks, swimming pools, all abandoned. And as we can imagine, if you imagine the Mediterranean Sea drying up now, what would it look like? Something sort of similar to these sort of images of abandonment, human objects left in this sort of growing desert. And so this one is XKCD. These are comics from XKCD, which is a wonderful webcomic about science. And I'm showing it to you today because it's a strip called Time. And he has 3,000 panels, actually 3,099 panels. So it takes a very long time to read. But it's one continuous story imagining human civilization during a time when the Mediterranean Sea has dried up and there are people living at the bottom of this dried up Med Sea. And I wouldn't give the story away, but it's an amazing read. I really recommend everyone to read it. It's an example of how to integrate science with art to sort of reimagine this, strange geological scenario into today's world. So that's me done for now, and I will wrap it up by reading two poems that I've written as part of this project. The first one is called Beach Umbrellas and Lost Sea. In this new world, our feet pad by the skeletons of beach umbrellas, ragged, curling in the hot sand. Melting plastic permeates the linings of our noses. Water drips onto the sand grains, cementing into gypsum plates and pearly calcite rims. Water percolating, leaking deep somewhere. Water abrades the canyon walls, falling into a sharp point, a V that cuts deeply through the Tethys, lost oceans, lost seas. Water seeking the low, that last low flattening to where it evaporates into clouds that burn our souls. Once we could walk to the edge of the infinite, our Ama and Gong Gong had said. We would not listen, for we are young and we know everything. And the second poem, which I'm going to read to you today, is Nest. It's a new poem that I wrote recently, so here it goes. I found a nest of pebbles perched high on a river-cracked ledge with no shadows, stranded by the mother river. The aluminium twinkle of an empty crisp packet wave too. Walkers, it said, never rotting, but crinkling, caught in the hatched granite. The teeth of canyon walls scar the land, lips crack, tongues gritty. The sulfur fire stains the air, rotten eggs everywhere. Thank you for your time and attention. I would appreciate any feedback, and you can contact me at my email address or my website, theelizabethwong.com.